Some of the finest and most fun parties I have ever been to have been the parties after a funeral. His name was Jack McCreary. He was Irish through and through, except he had become Lutheran. In the middle of our town, there was a lake with a park around it, complete with a meeting room that everyone called the boathouse. Before he died, Jack made all the plans for a party to take place after his funeral down at the boathouse. And he was insistent that the party include his favorite Irish beers, lots of them, lots of laughter, and lots of storytelling. Tom had spent much of his life as a cook. In retirement, he came along on several of our mission trips when we went down to Mississippi to clean up after Hurricane Katrina. Tom was in charge of cooking 3 meals a day for more than 100 volunteers. And when we gathered in the church fellowship hall after Tom's funeral, there was a smorgasbord of Tom's favorite foods from his favorite Polish restaurant, enough food for 4 times the number of people who came to his funeral. And here at Shepherd of the Bay, we have our own tradition of rich fellowship following funerals. We have a crew of hospitable and generous volunteers who put out platters of sandwiches from Main Street Market, some potato chips and pickles, of course, and fresh-baked desserts from kitchens around our congregation, and, of course, abundant carafes of coffee. A guy named Enoch had perhaps the most interesting idea about his post-funeral party. He decided he was going to have his post-funeral party before he died. He wanted to be there for it. He wanted to hear the stories that people were telling about him and join in the fun. And then when he dies, he said, just a burial service at the cemetery will be fine. Think of it. The chance to be at your own post-funeral party, which is about what we have going on here in the parable of the prodigal son. A son who gets to be there for his own party because the son who was dead is now alive. You know the contours of the story. A prosperous landowner with 2 sons. The younger son can't wait for daddy to die before he gets what's coming to him. And despite the insult, the father gives the younger son his share of the family property. And so Junior runs off to some first-century Las Vegas, blows it all in no time, and ends up eating beans and mush alongside the pigs he's feeding. Apparently, the only job he can get. And in one of those light bulb moments of desperation, he decides that he'd be far better off working as his father's hired hand on his father's farm than the hog slopping that he's currently doing. And so that's just what he does. Grabs the first bus he can and heads home. Embraced for abject humiliation at the hands of his father, he rehearses his speech over and over, how he's going to explain himself, trying to think of every possible objection, encountering those objections with, Dad, I don't need to be your son anymore. Just let me work here. All I need is a roof over my head and some food on my table. But as he comes down the lane, his father runs to greet him, arms open wide. You see, Daddy's been going down the lane every day, hoping that today is the day his son returns. And the lost boy can't even launch into his speech before the old man is wrapping him in the household's finest robe, fitting him with a gold ring that has the family crest. And before he can blink the tears out of his eyes, a fatted calf has been killed. And now most of the town has been invited to the homecoming party, the likes of which these parts have never seen. And if the story ended there, it would be just fine, right? The kingdom of God is like a big homecoming party, like a big funeral party, only there's no funeral. The dead are alive. It's you or I or Bob or Mary come back to God, and God throws a big party for us. It's good stuff. Except Jesus has more. You didn't forget that there's another son, did you? A big brother who's played by the rules all his life? The one who has not insulted his father? Who's been frugal and gets the whole thing about not giving in to short-term gratification. That older boy who gets up before the sun every morning, milks the cows twice a day, goes to the fields every day. The son who hasn't even had a birthday party for a few years because he's been too busy working. You know, the son who's really mad, who will not set foot at the party for that little twerp whom his dad has always loved more anyway, who doesn't care if he can hear the music and dancing for miles around. He's not going to dignify such injustice with his presence. He does have a point, you know. There's something to be said for being responsible. There's something to be said for doing the right thing and planning ahead and making sure there'll be enough for Dad to retire on and his own family to live on. Forget Mr. Irresponsible who has done everything wrong and comes home and still gets the party of the year. Doesn't son number one have the right to feel a little resentment? What a father. What a father. He doesn't berate that son and get all huffy and indignant with that older boy, nor does he try to defend the younger son's behavior. Instead, he shifts the attention away from either one of the sons and focuses the attention on his own extravagant love. There's plenty to go around. No one's going to get left out. All that's mine is yours. This is not Junior's party. This is my party. My son who was dead is alive, and I will be generous to all the ones I love, near or far, faithful or not, responsible or not, righteous or not. I will love all of them, and I will celebrate with them before they even have a chance to think about giving anything back. And that's how it is with God's kingdom. You, me, all of us, we're lost. Stuck in the pig slopping of our own greed and self-centeredness. And before we even knew how lost and desperate we were, God reached out to his chosen people Israel. And then he reached out in the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus. And he saved us and the whole world. God came running out to the mailbox every day, determined that we were going to come home and that we would be God's sons and daughters. It's not about what we have or haven't done, what we deserve or don't deserve, how responsible we've been or not, how faithful we've been or not. It's about God and God's life-giving love and mercy. Every time God's active, stretching, healing love finds someone and welcomes them back to God's big, generous ranch, it does not mean there's less for the rest of us. It means there's more. More wine, more dancing, more music, more feasting. It means another party, only now it's even bigger.